Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/malicious compliance. In today's episode, STDs are cheaper than PhDs. Make my friend cry and then lie about what I said in an official document? Okay, I'll play your games. Violate written safety procedures so we don't lose $24 million. Nope. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. STDs are cheaper than PhDs. I work for a company that among other things does security testing and verification of hardware that has strict security requirements. Think payment terminals or chips in credit cards or set-top boxes. Given this is a niche market and requires a lot of expertise, expensive equipment and knowledge, our rates are high. The day rate for me could buy you an entire weekend with a high-class escort, as the client in this story once told me. But we have a stellar reputation in the industry to go above and beyond for clients, and are still cheaper than your product shipping late or never. Most customers understand this. Large and established clients know the costs and don't ever mention it me. I have to check with the account manager to see how much he sold me for this time around. But we also serve smaller clients, startups or smaller companies that move into manufacturing/designing custom components or products that require our services as well. The company in question was a small company in Korea that made most of their money with a few legacy components used in alarm systems, among others. They had a monopoly on these components because larger manufacturers had since moved on because for them the economics did not make sense anymore. This smaller company had made it work for a few years longer, but already saw the end coming and started working on a new version of the component. Problem was that most of their capable staff had since left, and the product they had been designing for the past year was in itself an achievement for how broken and insecure it was. But the owner of the company, who was the grand architect of this masterpiece, did not see it that way. This product was great and would pass all certifications and allow his company to rake in cash for another 20 years. I didn't know any of this going in. The account manager sold me on a run-of-the-mill job. Upon first day of review of the product, I found so many simple issues that I stopped the review and sat down with the client and the account manager to talk about changing the assignment to better serve their needs and make them actually pass certification on the first try. This often happens with smaller clients that don't always know the process to certification and find themselves lost in the process and the strict requirements. We generally take a more practical approach to help them out. As their end goal is certification, it makes sense to focus on solving the issues instead of spending 2 weeks on a report stating they have issues. While at first he was open to it, and we changed 2 weeks of testing and reporting to me helping them getting things sorted. That way they might be able to hit their deadline with a more secure, albeit lower rated, component. But he quickly invited himself into every conversation I had with an engineer, as he was the grand architect, and belittled me continuously, mostly ending with sexist remarks. I've learned to ignore the occasion comment by men in my field by now, sometimes being witty and fast enough to sling a hurtful comment back to them. But the grand architect of sexism actually started getting under my skin by how often he did in just one 20-minute conversation. Surely continuously being sexist must even wear him out, right? Halfway during the week he suddenly brought in a potential new customer while I was working, not having mentioned it to me. I think because the company I work for is well known in the industry, he tried to put me on the spot with the customer to tell him how secure the product is, thinking the situation would make me just say the product was great to not create an incident. I said to come back later because I am doing very time-sensitive testing, and they luckily never came back. If he had pushed it, I would have probably said something to the effect of secure? Not at all, that's why I am here. I cannot lie about findings. It's my reputation and consequences be damned. At the end of the week we had an update meeting and Mr. Sexist only now told me that he changed his mind. He wanted nothing changed to product anymore, me gone, and a report on his desk by next week he can share with the certification body. He was able to get an earlier slot for review and was going to use it. The product was fine and he was done with me. After a short argument with me staying professional and trying to tell him he was only going to pass at a barely medium level with the fixes we put in over the last week, he told me that would be fine enough and to shut my mouth. I was AB*TCH who talked too much and knew nothing of this field he was already in for 40 years. during the conversation saying that the escort he slept with 2 weekends ago was cheaper than my day rate and she actually satisfied him. I had heard this one before, so without thinking told him something to the effect of STDs are cheaper than PhDs. He lost it and told me I was to write the required report for certification on the current product and nothing else. He did not want to see me at the office anymore. I said sure, I will send you an official request to provide me the documents. Be sure to upload them as soon as you can so I can get on with it, and you'll get the report in the mail before end of day Friday next week. Unbeknownst to him, the fixes I put in over the week only existed in files on the local notebooks of the engineers. Most companies have proper version tracking/syncing software and workplace rules in place to handle this. But this company didn't, and only one engineer had added the changes to the main design documents during the week. So the official documents that got sent to my company that evening were the files from before I had added fixes with the engineers, with only 2 minor fixes that made it in, but were insignificant in the slew of issues in this product. Normally I would double check with the client and inform them about missing documents and the like. But he had clearly said in the email that these were the correct files. Sure, if you say so. Enter my malicious compliance. I wrote the report based on the current documentation, but every item on the checklist would color red with a big fat fail in the results column. He get his report on Friday and within the hour was on the line with my account manager, who I had told everything. He had his own issues with client, and he was on board with me, because he knew me for years and I had a stellar record with dozens of his other clients, and he basically told him that his attitude caused review problems, and he himself had insisted these were the correct files he wanted reviewed. In the weeks after there were some threats about lawsuit, but with us backing out on helping them further, given non-payment and the threat of lawsuits, his company never put out the product and 2 months later was bought for cheap by one of our other clients in part of a talent acquisition. The employees were fine engineers, they just did not have the particular skill set they needed for this component. The client who bought them paid our outstanding bills without any issue. After making use of our connections, they got them to sell us the rights and design documents for this particular component in exchange for a week of training. It had no value to them, and given the costs of our training it was bargain as far as they were concerned. As broken as the product was, it was too good to pass up for training purposes because of the myriad of basic mistakes in it. I had already written half the training material in the report for it anyway. I still give training from time to time with it detailing all the wrong ways of doing things. Make my friend cry and then lie about what I said in an official document? Okay, I'll play your games. Once upon a time, there was an evil witch. This all happened my senior year of college, spanning about 6 months. I lived in a duplex where the main floor and second floor were occupied by myself and friends. Oftentimes, we'd throw parties in our incredibly large attic. One of these times, we got a noise complaint. Everyone was very respectful when the cop asked us to shut things down, and left no problem. All residents were 21-20 seconds, and we were the only ones asked to ID ourselves. Had a fine conversation with the officer, and he went on his way. Probably one of the easier incidents in a college town. While we lived off campus, any incident like this does get reported to the school. All 6 of us received a letter stating we had to go to a class about drugs and alcohol because we threw a party where drugs and alcohol were supplied to minors. We could of course appeal this, and we did. The school only needs 51% certainty that the event occurred how they thought it did. Seeing as everyone ID'd was 21 and there had been no drugs, we thought we had a strong case. This meant all 6 of us had to meet with the dean individually to go through the events of the evening, so she could ascertain what really happened. First 4 went fine, my female roommate was 5th, and I went last. She came home in tears. The dean apparently tried to rip her to pieces, said she had awful friends, why not just admit we had drugs and given alcohol to minors? She stuck to her guns, but it sounded awful. I can handle that stuff, but I hate seeing people I care about go through situations like that. I went in prepared to my meeting, already hating this woman. I even had my phone recording the conversation in my shirt pocket. Single-party consent state in terms of audio recording, the conversation ended with her saying why can't you just follow the rules and act like a grown-up? A few weeks later, we all received another letter. They had dropped the drugs alcohol bit due to lack of evidence, but had decided we had created an unsafe environment with only one exit. There were a few lines in the letter where student X said in the event of a fire, guests would have been asked to jump out of the rear window, and other completely fabricated statements. Sure, there was only one flight of stairs up to the attic. But unbeknownst to the assistant dean, we had one of those fire escape ladder window things. We appealed yet again. But the second time around, you meet with a board of peers, teachers, students, assistant dean, and the police officer that had responded to the complaint. Being a law nerd, I volunteered to go on behalf of my friends. That being said, we were allowed one person as counsel that couldn't say anything to the board, but could write things down to pass on to me. QMC and following the rules just like the ass Dean had asked. I showed up early, as did the officer. He was totally chill, and was getting paid OT to show up to a meeting to do nothing instead of the usual route. Everyone shows up, and the ass Dean immediately questions why I have someone with me. Well, per school code 14 subsection B etc. I am allowed to. This is my friend X, who has a law degree. Just following the rules. We get into semantics and how dangerous our party could have been blah blah. I get to speak last, without any interruptions, until I yield. Time to drop bombs. I pull out printed sheets for everyone in the room of my Amazon account showing I had purchased the fire escape ladder thing months before the party had happened, proving we had indeed had multiple exits. I then passed out copies of the letter we had received written by the ass Dean and had highlighted all of the fabrications and lies about the previous conversation I'd had with her. I recorded our entire meeting. I'd like to take time for you all to hear that. At this point she's fuming and blurts out that what I did is illegal. The cop butts in and just gives that a big ol' nope. Single party consent for audio recording. We all listened to the full 15 to 20 minutes. So as you can see, all rules were followed by myself and my peers, and nothing unlawful happened. Not one of the highlighted sections was actually said. The only thing that worries me is how the ass Dean openly lied as well as brought my roommate to tears. I'd asked that all charges be dropped at this time against us. She then tried to backtrack saying she had made grammatical errors in the letter, but everyone was smart enough to see the difference between the wrong form of your and telling people to jump out of a window. A few weeks later we all received another letter stating that we were good, and no further action would be taken. I then went out of my way almost daily to walk through the admin offices where the ass Dean's office was to give her a wave and a smile. Violate written safety procedures so we don't lose $24 million. Nope. This happened about 15 years ago at a large manufacturing plant, at which I was one of 120 industrial electricians, and this happened in the department in which I was primarily responsible. These jobs pay upwards of $30 per hour, and I was making $34 per hour at the time. This was my career for decades before I retired last year. I now get a pension from them and fully paid health care. This wasn't just a run-of-the-mill job. This was something to take very, very seriously. Our safety administrator retired, so a new guy started and decided to audit all of the lockout-tagout procedures, LOTO, everywhere in the facility. This place employed 4,000 people, and was over 1.5 million square feet, so it was a massive undertaking. Many of the machines in my department were large, multi-station transfer machines, where the part goes into several drilling/milling/tapping/boring operations, and are transferred to the next station in turn between operations. Basically, the operator loads a raw part into it, and once it comes back around to him/her, it's finished. The cycle time for this machine was about 1 minute, and was a key part in expensive final products, costing upwards of $50,000 each. It was made clear to me that the company lost $50,000 for every minute the machine was idle, as a way of instilling urgency, as if I needed it. As I said, these machines had multiple stations that each had its own specialized operation to accomplish, all automatically. This, of course, involved many switches, buttons, computers, motors, encoders, drives, all of which are used in industrial automation and sequencing. Usually, when an electrical part broke on a particular station, I would shut down the electrical power for that one station to perform my repairs and replacements. All was good, and I could usually perform just about any repair within 15 minutes or less. The management people usually didn't even know anything unusual happened, as the operators were on piecework and would often skip a break to make up the shortfall. Until the new Loto procedures were released for those machines. The new procedure required anyone performing repairs to Loto every station, for every kind of energy potential. This includes electrical, pneumatic, hydraulic, and gravity. Since this was a union facility, this required the services of an electrician, a plumber, a mechanic, and a millwright. It also required something like 38 individual locks to be applied by the aforementioned skilled tradespersons. It also required about 4 to 8 hours of work to complete this task. Keep in mind these were huge machines that would take up an area the size of a gymnasium and cost tens of millions of dollars to buy. When I saw the new Loto procedure, I grabbed my boss and the production supervisor and showed it to them and explained in detail why this was ridiculous, unnecessary, and unworkable. My boss got the safety administrator, and we all had a conference, and I was told, basically, that's the way it is. The very next day a type of switch called a proximity switch failed on one of these machines. Normally, a 5 to 10 minute repair. Cue malicious compliance. I dutifully informed the production supervisor that he lost his machine for the rest of the shift and half the following shift. He chuckled and said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Dude, I'm dead serious." I got my boss, told him I needed 38 Loto locks, a plumber, a mechanic, and a millwright. He looked at me like I had 3 heads. Remember the conversation we had yesterday? It just got real. Show me why you need 38 locks. Okay, and I brought him to the machine, pulled the 10-page illustrated, notated, laminated, Loto procedure off the machine, and counted where each and every lock needs to go. And I need the other tradesmen here as well. I figure the machine will be rendered safe by the end of the shift. Matt can do the repair, and another 4 hours to remove the locks and set the machine up to be ready to run by their lunchtime. Also, keep in mind that there will be cribbing to make the gravity potential safe, and most locks need a special kind of hardware to apply to valves and other devices to be able to function correctly. Just fix it the way you usually fix it, my boss told me. Put it in writing, I said. Just fix the damn thing, was his unhelpful reply. I think you need to give it to me in writing, or you need to get my union rep here. Those are your 2 choices. I'm not gonna get fired over this. About this time, several men in suits and ties showed up to find out what the problem is, called into action by the production supervisor I previously mentioned. He and I had a great working relationship, and he knew what was going down, so he started making phone calls when I let him know his machine was broke. To make a long story short, an hour-long meeting was held which included my union rep, after which I was provided written permission to make the repairs as I always had. The new safety administrator had been properly scolded and learned a lesson. Management learned to just let WireNut do his job, and the machine was running 10 minutes after I received the paper. That was a loss of $3.5 million according to their math. It would have been $24 million lost if I had to follow their procedures to the letter. All new procedures were put in place with much input from my colleagues and me. This was a test case for how the other 500 skilled tradespeople were going to be proceeding with the new safety guy, as they had also been provided with new, ridiculous Loto procedures. It just turned out that I was the first to have to implement them.